live stream too, please?
That's us.
You, okay. Thank you, Andrea. One, two, three, four. I'm only counting 4 parent members so far. So we don't yet have quorum for our meeting. We'll give it up to 10 minutes for others to join in the call. So if everyone would just please stand by.
Are we live streaming already, Jerry?
Yes, we are.
I hope I don't get any current calls on my phone number that you.
I hope not too. Maria, Andrea's resending you the link, if that's helpful at all.
You know what? Director Daly actually sent it to me because I accidentally copied everybody. I didn't mean to do that. But,
oh, okay.
but I'm just trying to get in now, so I should be okay. Thank you, though.
Sure, no worries. I think we have 6 now. And we need, how many are we all together? 10. Okay, so if we, let me just double check that we have 6 and then we can proceed. All right, so I am seeing for parent member representation.
Sorry, Jerry, I'm on my computer now. I don't know if you're counting me twice by any chance because I was on both at one point. But
I don't think I am, but I'll make sure I don't. Thanks, Maria. So I see Tiana, I see Jen, of course, Jordan, Maria, myself, and Kevin. So that by my count is 6, which gives us 50% plus 1. So we are actually good to go. Okay, so good evening again once again, everyone, and welcome to our CPIC meeting. I'm Jerry Bergen, one of your co-chairs for CPIC for this year. Okay, and we'll start off, of course, as we always do, with our opening prayer and land acknowledgement. Father Dave, I'm pretty sure I saw you there. Would you be kind enough to open up us with an opening prayer, please?
Sure. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we come to you today asking for your guidance, wisdom, and support as we begin this meeting. Help us engage in meaningful discussion. Allow us to grow closer as a group and nurture the bonds of community. Continue to remind us that all that we do here today, all that we accomplish, is for the pursuit of your greater glory and for the service of our school communities. We ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen. The Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Father Dave. And I'll pass it over to Andrea for our land acknowledgement. Yes, fingers crossed.
Hamilton, as we know it today,
is rich in the history and modern traditions
of many First Nations and the Métis.
From the lands of the Anishinaabe
to the Attawandaron,
the Haudenosaunee,
and the Métis. These lands surrounding me greatly
are steeped in Indigenous history.
As we gather today
on these treaty lands,
our Catholic social teachings
call us in solidarity
with our Indigenous brothers and sisters.
So honor and respect
the four directions:
lands, waters, plants, animals, and ancestors
that walked before us.
All these wonderful elements of creation exist,
gifted to us by our Creator God. We acknowledge and thank
the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation
for being stewards of this traditional territory.
All right, great. Thank you, both Andreas, for getting it going there. All right. Okay, so moving right into our agenda then. First up, approval of the agenda. If I can have someone move to approve the agenda.
I move to approve. It's Tiana.
Thank you, Tiana. And do I have a seconder? All right, thank you, Jen. 10 seconds. Oh, thank you. I had 2 seconders. Thank you. All right. And minutes from our past meeting on September 20th. If I could have someone move to accept and approve our minutes, please.
I move to accept and approve.
And who's that, Jordan?
Yep.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And a seconder, please. Okay, thank you, Jen. Jen seconded for the minutes. Thank you. Okay, first item of business on our agenda for tonight is community representative position. To date, it sits vacant. However, we do have a candidate that has come forward, known to many of us from over the years, Alexandria Gonzalez, and Alexandra's with us online this evening, and we actually distributed as well prior to the meeting to the members of the committee a brief bio that Alex was kind enough to write and provide to us ahead of time. So we'll give Alex a couple of minutes to speak to the committee as to why she feels she would be a good fit for the community rep position. And then if any of the committee members wish to address Alex, ask any questions, anything of that nature, we'll have some time for that as well. So Alex, if you're ready, please go ahead. Turn on your camera, unmute yourself.
Okay,
and,
let me see. Can
nice
you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. Thank you so much for letting me be part of this meeting today. As you said before, I know a couple of you. My name is Alexandria Gonzalez, and I am the parent of 2 graduates and 1 child in grade 11, right now in the extended French program at St. Ignatius of Loyola. For 8 years, I was part of CPIC as a parent representative, as an elected parent representative. And over the years, I always saw the value of having the community rep, right? The value not only that the schools have, right, in our communities, but how we can work together with members of the community to engage parents, engage grandparents, engage people in Catholic education. And, in these COVID times, I think that we've seen many different things. And what I have come to realize is we need more people in the community that can help us to promote Catholic education, to help us to understand that the school, the home, and parish relationship is important even in these times, and especially in these times, I would say. So I just want to bring my name to the table and see if I'm a good fit for you at that moment, at this moment, and I'm able to participate as a community rep. I think the rest was in the bio. I don't want to repeat everything that probably you have said, you have already read, but I really appreciate what the Catholic schools do. I wasn't I wasn't born in Canada. I'm an immigrant, and I really, over all the years, have said out loud how impressed and how proud I am of the Catholic system that we have in Ontario. And it's unique around the world. So I would love to be part of this civic committee again and be able to bring like my experience, my talent, and my gifts and put them at the service of the community.
All right, terrific. Thank you, Alex, for that presentation. I should do a call out here. I don't believe we have any other candidates presenting themselves tonight, but just in case, is anyone else aware of any other candidates? No, okay. Yeah, this is, and I must say, this is the first time we've done this virtually. The appointment of a community rep. Normally, of course, we'd be meeting here in the board office and meeting them in person, and they would each take their turn, whoever would be presented. Anyways, before we get to the voting process, any of our committee members wish to address Alex at all? Any remarks or questions you might have? Looks like they're going to let you off easy, Alex. Okay. All right. It doesn't seem we have any questions for Alex. So what we'll do at this time, Alex, is we'll ask you to drop off the meeting. The committee will discuss. We'll have a discussion. I'll be transparent with you, Alex, and also for the committee's benefit. The choices before us, of course, are to have you acclaimed as the only candidate present, or we may choose not to fill the position at this time. That is an option according to our bylaws to have it run vacant. So that's what frankly we'll be discussing. So we'll ask you to drop off, Alex, and then do we have Alex's contact information? Yeah, Alex, if you wouldn't mind standing by offline, we'll reach back out to you shortly. And should you be acclaimed to the position, then we'll obviously invite you back to attend the rest of the meeting. Okay. All right. Great. Thank you, Alex. Okay. So as I just explained, the choices before us are, number one, to acclaim Alex to the position of community rep, or for whatever reasons we decide to not fill it. That is the other choice that we have. So I'll simply open the floor for discussion, for remarks about Alex and our options before us. Yes, Maria, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm just really confused by this process, because I would think that if we were going to make a decision not to fill it, we would make that decision before we accept nominees. I would think there would have to be a really good reason not to accept someone. And in fact, the bylaws say that a vote is required if there's more than one nominee, and we're not in that situation. We have a nominee. I do realize that we can elect not to fill it, but I think, again, that should be something that happens before we accept nominations. So that's my comments.
Okay. Is it safe to say you're in support then, Maria, of filling it with Alex?
Absolutely. Okay. Again, I remember Alex from when I would pop into CPIC meetings over the years in the past, and she has an incredible amount of passion She has a real focus on the faith piece, which, let's be honest, that's not always our strength. So that's great. And again, I would think, I'm not saying just sort of take anybody, but, if there's no other candidates, I don't know why we would leave the position vacant. I would think there would have to be a really good reason to do that. So.
Yeah, no, fair enough. I guess all fair commentary. Notwithstanding, we could choose to not fill it, despite a candidate being presented.
Well, yeah, I do realize that, but I would think that should happen beforehand, because that's really awkward to decide it after one person's come forward.
Yeah.
So
Well, again, if there were perhaps reasons to not fill it with that person, we may choose not to fill it.
Right,
but,
and I guess that's what I'm saying.
And saying that, I'm just saying that, as kind of a matter of statement or observation of our understanding of our own bylaws. I'm not saying that we shouldn't fill it with Alex by all means, because like you, I had the pleasure of working with Alex on CPIC in my first term, and she was nothing but terrific. So I echo your sentiments.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay. So I'll ask the question. Anyone opposed to filling the community rep position with Alex Gonzalez? Is that coming through on the microphone? That's really weird. I apologize. I'm pouring water.
I'm just happy it's pouring water, Jerry.
Gosh.
Some of our politicians have, never mind.
Oh my gosh. You see some of those funny outtakes from, town council meetings or a funny thing. Anyway. Okay. All right. I'm not seeing any objections. So I think by simple way of someone moving, I think to accept Alex's candidacy or nomination as community rep. Would someone like to so move?
I'll move. It's Maria.
Okay, thank you, Maria. And do we have a seconder?
I'll second.
Sorry, who was that?
Jordan.
Jordan, thank you, Jordan. All right, still getting used to everyone's voices. All right, very good. We've got our community rep position filled with Alex Gonzalez. Congratulations, Alex. Let's invite her back to the meeting, and we'll proceed. Yeah, and just again, everyone, just on kind of personal experience note and what Maria was saying, she's lovely lady and very passionate about Catholic education and just Catholicism in general. Again, she brings a strong faith element. I agree, and just a keen desire to improve things for our kids. So I think she'll be a terrific addition to the committee. So. All right. Okay. So while we're waiting for Alex to rejoin, we'll keep going. We'll forge ahead with our agenda, and over to Nancy for our updates from the board. One second. Sorry, Nancy. Alex is back already. Alex, congratulations and welcome back to CPIC. It's great to have you on board.
Thank you. I'm very excited, and I hope I get to know all of you at some point personally. It's really great to see how over the years CPIC has more and more representatives and the diversity, that they represent the diversity of our community. So thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Great, terrific. Thanks again, Alex. Appreciate you putting yourself forward. Okay, now moving on with our board updates. Thanks, Nancy.
Thank you, Jerry, and good evening, everyone. Jerry, I think we just get you to turn off your speaker. Thank you, Jerry. Good evening, everyone. It's wonderful to be with you this evening, and thank you to the few people that have joined us here at the board meeting. The first time we have some in-person individuals, and know that as we go forward throughout the year, there will be an opportunity to try to engage everyone face-to-face when we can. As we have begun the third week of October, we're thrilled to have been able to begin so many activities and routines that are part of our normal routine at school while still maintaining the health and safety of protocols for COVID-19 in our schools. The health and safety of our students and staff continue to be at the forefront of our planning, and we are so pleased that our schools have many of our students attending regularly and participating in many extracurricular opportunities. Most of our schools have met with their new Catholic School Council and have chairs and co-chairs in place, parish reps and OAPC reps. All Catholic school councils are reviewing their bylaws and will be working with their administration on their school-generated plan that will be submitted to their family of school superintendent by November 30th. Our parish priests and youth ministers have been working collaboratively with the schools to have students participate in liturgies and masses and some face-to-face visits with the priests in the school. Sacraments have taken place for grade 3 and 8 students who did not have the opportunity to have First Reconciliation, First Communion, or Confirmation last year throughout September and October. Grade 2 and 7 parents have received communication through the school and the parishes for sacramental prep for this year. Through the deanery, all parishes have shared their sacramental plan with the virtual school, St. Clair of Assisi, and all virtual students will prepare for their sacraments with their local parishes. Special thank you to Father Dave for being on our virtual school naming committee throughout the summer and bringing forward the name that we have now named our virtual school, St. Clair of Assisi. Thank you, Father Dave. At the secondary level, we are at the midpoint of the first quadmester with midterm marks going out this week. Competitive interschool sports are up and running, and we have spectators attending the outdoor activities of football, field hockey, cross country, and the golf program. Through the direction of Health and Public Health, we will begin shortly to have spectators at our indoor basketball and volleyball program. Extracurricular clubs and activities are well underway, and we look forward to beginning many of our traditional programs in the next weeks and months ahead. At the October 5th board meeting, Director Daly shared with the system, as has been our long-standing practice, subject councils at the secondary level will continue to make collaborative and consistent decisions about the final evaluation format for each course, which includes a culminating performance task, which may include a final exam. There is an expectation that the senior college and university, grade 11 and 12, MC and U courses, students be given an opportunity to learn effective test-taking strategies and study habits and have the opportunity to practice skills and receive feedback. Students will also be given the opportunity to practice and participate in a timed assessment, which could be a unit test, to help build the necessary skills for post-secondary. Schools are working through the effective strategies to deliver timed assessments that are equitable to both the face-to-face students and those who are learning remotely. At the elementary level, routines are well established in the classrooms and throughout outdoor play. Thank you to the parents for working together with the schools with the return to school plan and making modifications as we go on each month. Many of our schools are beginning their fall fundraising campaign in consultation with the Catholic School Council, which may include a hot lunch program, a Halloween event, a school donation campaign. The plan for the hot lunch programs or fundraising is unique to each school and done in collaboration with the parents. All are important for the many things schools provide to their community. Our educators in elementary now have a good understanding of student needs, and program development and tasks are being executed to meet the needs of students, develop skills, and close gaps. Each school has a plan to begin to welcome parent volunteers for the support that's needed in the school. and each school has their unique plan of how many parent volunteers they will be having in their building. All of this will be communicated by the schools. Within each school, extracurricular programs, which include peer groups, robotics, arts and music, sports, while maintaining the COVID protocols with their cohorts, are in place. At this time at the elementary level, we are not running an inter-school sports program, and we are hopeful that the COVID conditions will improve in Halton Region and elementary inter-school sports will begin in the spring. Special education plans will be going home electronically to parents tomorrow. Our Curriculum Central office staff is working with our educators to provide ongoing PD to staff and are in our schools daily. Our secondary schools are hosting virtual information nights for our grade 8 parents over the next few weeks, including AP Information Night and the IB Information Night. In our schools, our special educators through the CERTs and child and youth counselors and social work staff have been working on a variety of programs to meet the students' needs and support the mental health of all our students. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Maria.
Yeah, hi. I'm looking for clarification on the secondary exams because I know this is a question I've been asking, our school council has asked, and we're continuing to get very vague information. You know, there may be exams are permitted. What courses are going to have final exams this year?
I'm going to do my best to answer that for you, Maria. Each of the subject councils are developing that plan, and it should be communicated, okay, in the next little while, since we're at the midway point. As I said, the decision that the subject councils who provided us feedback to the senior mid team felt, yes, there needs to be some timed assessments, some like exam formats for the students, but what that's going to look like, how it's going to come up to that final end of the unit, end of the term assessment is what each subject council is going to provide to us. Once that is decided, they're going to share that with their school community, and it will be consistent with, so like, for example, if it's a calculus course that's running that exam, then it's calculus right across the system is going to be running an exam, okay? So the subject councils are just finalizing that information, and then they'll be communicating to the students and then to the parents of each of the high schools what that plan is for the exam.
Okay, so I definitely appreciate the consistency piece because I think that would be very problematic if it wasn't. But I guess I'm just concerned because it's late. I think we're more than halfway through the first quadmester. So it just seems really late. I don't know when this information is finally coming. It came up in June. So yeah, I mean, the first quadmester I think is done mid-October. So, or sorry, mid-November.
November 10th and 11th are the culminating days of that assessment.
So is that going to give time for teachers who, you know, up to now haven't known if they're going to be having to provide an exam to do that? And I guess I know you commented on, you know, maybe timed assessments for a unit test, but I just, you know, and others know, I'm delegating on this tomorrow night because I feel very strongly about this, but I'll just, since I have an opportunity here as well to provide feedback in a different way. You know, a timed assessment on a unit test or even a multi-unit test of a few units, it just doesn't compare to, you know, a year from now, these kids are going to be writing a 3-hour exam worth 50% of their marks, some of them. So it's really quite a different, and I'm not suggesting that we, you know, make them write a 3-hour exam worth 50% of their mark, but just something a little closer to that would be helpful. So I guess I'll just, you know, I guess the information's coming. I don't want to belabor the point, but I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Marianne. And like you make that comment for the students, it's not anything like a typical school year with it being run through the quadmester. And so they're doing their course contact very quickly. So we do want to give them opportunities for an assessment that's going to support their learning and not hinder them or create too much stress for them at this point in time. And I think that's why it's taken this time that we have given it over the last few weeks to really ground ourselves on that decision. Okay, so I know you're delegating tomorrow night, and we do have a plan going forward, and it's about how we're going to better support or best support our students right now. It is a unique circumstance. It's not a circumstance any of us have been through before, and we want to make sure the students are successful at the end of this quadmester. Denise, I think you have a question. Go ahead, Denise.
Can you hear me now? I'm
Yes.
sorry. I
Yeah,
can't
no
seem to
problem.
unmute. Okay. It was just a follow-up from Maria, actually, on the same line of questioning. I'm interested in the preparation aspect of especially for timed assessments or exams and things, because just in terms of practice, when you mentioned the word practice, I was interested in what the plan was for teachers to give students an opportunity to understand what it means to do this in terms of an assessment like this, not a culminating, but a timed assessment, simply because of the oddity of the school year last year as well. So, you know, it is a skill. It's a learned skill. And so in my opinion, I would want to see any student have an opportunity to practice and have an opportunity to see what it looks like. So I don't know if I'm being clear, but I just wondered if that was being discussed in terms of how much lead time are they giving for practice before the actual final assessment takes place, if it is timed, was my question.
Thank you, Denise. And I don't have the exact thing of what all the teachers are doing at the secondary level, but there have been assessments that have already taken place for students, which would have been a timed assessment. So the teachers are already adjusting based on the needs of the students at that time. And first of all, the teachers do know how to set up a timed assessment, because prior to COVID, we would have had timed assessments. But the thing is, each of the courses was a lot shorter. It wasn't 150-minute of a course. And so even with those assessments, if you're going to do it for the students, you're giving them, is it over 2 days? What does it look like depending on the course? And those are the things that the subject councils are working together to really identify. But assessments have already taken place, okay? And we've heard some feedback, because for some students that was very stressful, and some students actually chose to drop a course because of an assessment. So we don't want that to happen to the students. We really do need to ensure they're ready for an assessment and not be fearful of an assessment. And even if they are unsuccessful in assessment, on those opportunities to redo something or be given another opportunity is really important right now. So this is what's really different. Until we actually do it with the students, we can't adjust until we actually give them those opportunities, okay?
Yeah, thank you.
So, but all of your feedback is important, okay? And we hear what you're saying, okay? I think I saw somebody else's hand go up. Jerry, is that you? I don't know.
Yeah, that's me. Okay. Yeah, you might have to mute yourself briefly, eh? Okay. It's so funny, you know, Nancy's sitting, well, maybe 12 feet from me, and yet I have to do this. Anyway, yeah, you know, just a question that's been raised in some of the you know, the circles in our own community around a return to semesters, the semester system for secondary. Are there any talks yet about that? About I don't know if that has to go to the ministry for that kind of a change to happen, or if that's a board decision. But is there any talk yet about a return to semesters?
Jerry, Director Daly is on the meeting, and he's got his hand up, and I'll let Director Daly speak to that.
Thanks, Nancy. Hi, folks. Great question, Jerry, and certainly one that lots of boards have been talking about. I think our coterminous board actually may have written a letter to the ministry about changing back to the regular semester format. Kind of the latest that we have on that is, you know, the quadmester or modified semester system that boards are using was really mandated by the ministry, so we were limited to 2 credits a day. So in terms of being able to move from that, that'll also be based on kind of the go-ahead from the ministry, who's looking for the go-ahead from the Chief Medical Officer of Health. So kind of the latest information we have is that, and we talked about this last week with the Deputy Minister, and actually we, at our board, a couple of us met with the Minister on Friday and asked a similar question about what second semester might look like. They haven't made a decision yet. Like many of these types of decisions, I think they'd like to, I don't want to say wait until a later date, but they do want to get a sense of what COVID numbers are like across the province. The quad that we're in now, we can't change until second semester. It's just the nature of the way it's set up. I think most, or at least the feedback I've heard from parents has been that, and from some students as well, is that there's a preference to move back to a regular semester in semester 2. I don't think we'll get direction probably until December, one way or the other.
Okay, so thanks, Pat, for that. All right, so waiting for direction. Is Halton Catholic or any other boards that you're aware of kind of lobbying or petitioning the ministry to make the move or put plans in place to move back?
Yeah, and I might have misspoke. I'm trying to think if the public boards actually sent a letter. I did hear, you know, in a different meeting, I did hear somebody from the public board advocate to the ministry to be able to make that change. And specifically, I guess in Halton, because our vaccination numbers are high, both, you know, kind of across the board. Again, I think the government's position would be, and the ministry's position would be, that'll be a decision made by the Chief Medical Officer of Health, and then ultimately in conjunction with local public health. As I said, we wouldn't be able to change to that, to a traditional semester until second semester. I think most boards were hopeful that we'd be able to do that by second semester, and I think that would be the desire of the ministry if we could do it as well. I think if there's advocacy going on right now, Jerry, it's for those boards who are on the modified semester that could change to a semester system kind of midstream. So that's a number of public boards. I'm not sure any Catholic boards adopted the modified semester. So that might be the advocacy that's going on, to be able to make the change sooner than second semester.
Okay, very good. Thanks for that insight, Pat. Nancy, I do have one more question, so if you don't mind, I'll go ahead. So yeah, you were in your recap. You were mentioning about sports returning not till spring. I think that's at the elementary level. Can you speak more to that as to why the lengthy pause?
Sure, Jerry. Elementary level, what is different for the secondary level is our students are still full grade. So we have.
I'm off.
We our grade 7s and 8s can be vaccinated, but younger than that cannot. And what we're doing when we have the elementary inter-school sports, we're going to be mixing students that we don't know if they're vaccinated or not. And so until we get direction from public health, because even our extracurricular programs, we go through public health to get feedback about what we're doing and if it aligns with what they've put out in the return to school plan. So I say spring, if it could be in the winter, because vaccination rates, or we start to vaccinate, like we're going to be working together with them, but we have to take their direction. And at this time, the direction isn't to do inter-school sports with multiple schools together the way we would traditionally do for elementary, But what we're asking through the athletic councils of the schools is to start working on the skill development of the students for the traditional programs like basketball and volleyball, with the hope that we will have something being able to be offered to the elementary panel by the springtime. And not to say it could be before the springtime, but at this time, there's no direction that we could open it up anytime soon. Okay. I don't know if that helps to answer that question, Jerry.
So, and you mentioned extracurriculars. So does this, that kind of approach apply to field trips and the like, or that presumably would be different given that they could still remain cohorted? So yeah, so what about extracurriculars and field trips? What's the direction there?
So at this time we have, well, depending on extracurricular field trips. So field trips, we haven't opened up, but we are going to open up field trips so that the schools were given direction that they could start planning, but we didn't say at what point. So I think our long-term plan was that, again, by the spring that we would have some traditional field trips happening, as long as we knew that it was aligned to what public health was giving us as information. Like for our younger grades, when you're doing a field trip at some venues, you're going to be mixing different schools. And that's where with the unvaccinated students, we don't want that to happen, because that could create the circumstance where we're going to have to close a class. And so that's where we have to be under the direction of public health when we're going to open up those field trips. But schools have been planning for field trips for later in the year. At this time, no clear direction in terms of when we're going to actually open that up.
Okay, thanks, Nancy.
Okay. Go ahead, Maria.
Hi. Okay. So I originally had my hand up for another exam question / comment, and then I had one about the semester. So I'm going to backtrack here a little bit. With respect to returning to a regular semester, I know there are, I don't know if our coterminous board is one of them, but I know there are some boards that have written to the minister to ask for a return to a full semester. I don't know if there are boards that are on a modified semester or not. I'm grateful our board didn't go with a modified semester. I did not get good feedback from my student at home as to how that might work. As much as I'm not crazy about the quadmester either, but I know we were limited in our choices. But yeah, there are some boards that have written to the ministry, and I'd like to make a recommendation. We have a couple of trustees here tonight, and I know that our trustees have written letters to the ministry on other topics. I think this is a really important one. I think the quadmester has a number of challenges to it. So why don't we write a letter about that? You know, maybe if enough boards write into the ministry, it will influence them. So I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that. And then just back on the exam topic, you know, again, I realize that the quadmester presents some challenges, and the exam piece is one of them. And I know some kids are stressed out about exams, but I will say some kids are stressed out about not having exams and not having that experience, and they recognize what they're going to be facing next year. So we really need to consider them as well. And I will share that the feedback that I've gotten from parents is they feel like there's a resistance and there's a fight to not have exams. That's how it's sort of coming across, and I understand that sentiment from the discussions that have happened and not happened. So again, I don't know if you want to comment on that, but I just wanted to share that as well.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Maria. All your comments have been heard. And I know that the subject councils, together with Superintendent Jeff Kroll, has gone through a pretty thorough process, trying to get some feedback, which had like different stakeholders feedback as well. CPIC was part of it. There was representatives from CPIC on that discussion panel. I also believe through SEAC as well. And like you said, you make the point as well. It's not just a quick thing that we think is going to be good for all students. So it's keeping in mind all students when those decisions are being made. But your points have been heard, and so know that your voice has been heard. Okay. Thank you, Maria.
Sorry, and do you know who the reps were? Because I know I was part of the Return to School Committee, but I was on a different, or this. Yeah, I don't remember being part of any discussion there, so I wasn't sure. I didn't think we did have representation on the exam issue specifically.
Maria, you were on the Return to School Learner Committee in the summer, and there was the secondary return to school discussion. I believe you were part of that in the summer, right? Okay. When they talked about that, the conversation had started in the summer.
Yeah, I think you know what, I was on two different committees, and now I'm getting confused. But then there were subcommittees. So I don't remember now. I did hear that it was being discussed, but at the time there was no sort of final decision. But I know I didn't provide, through that committee, I didn't provide any input on that. It was sort of more reporting back to us. Anyways.
Okay, thanks, Maria. Jen, go ahead. Thanks, Jen. I'll do both questions. So first, around the sports, the goal is to bring back to elementary inter-school sports with mixing of school teams. We're not at that point yet, just because of we do have, some of our teams do have students who are in grade 6 who participate, and because that's the group that's not able to be vaccinated, there's where the caution is. I want you to know the same way we've moved forward with the secondary schools, our plan is to move forward with the elementary schools. Okay, we'll just do it a little bit cautious, especially since our programs our inter-school sports programs isn't just municipal, it's right across the whole region. We'll have to scale that back to whatever it's going to look like, but we know that that's something that is at the discussion with the inter-school sports committee, okay? In terms of the field trips, schools could be looking at their year-end grade 8 trip. I don't know if we're at the point where we're going to say overnight grade 8 trips can be a go, but they can start investigating it. Those decisions are going to be made together with Catholic school councils of the desire for it. We have to be very cautious with those grade 8 trips, because you also don't want to create a scenario where it's only a select. When we do those trips, it's about the majority of the students in grade 8 participating on those trips. And because of COVID and the circumstances, we may not get that. And so we have to be very cautious about that. Schools can investigate if they're going to think about if it's going to be a camping trip or if it's going to be like, you know, the traditional to Ottawa trips. But we have to be very cautious on things like that right now. It's not the same circumstances as another year, but the schools want to investigate, make that aware to their parents about their investigation. But again, public health has to support it. And as a system, we have to support it so that it's equitable for all the students in grade 8. Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, everyone. One more. Go ahead, Alex.
Hi, can you hear me there? Good. Yeah, I just have a question, like moving forward in the building the strong relationship with the homeschool and parish, right? I know, well, about my parish, right? Particularly that they're started to do the sacraments again. And I know the teachers participated in a liturgy. I was wondering, is that at the discretion of each family of schools, or do you have like a plan into getting the children back into the sacraments and the participation of the children in the liturgies at the churches?
Alex, I'm going to try my best to answer that, but maybe Father Dave, if you have any further insight from the deanery. There is opportunities with each local parish what their sacramental plan is. So I know, for example, at my parish, that what that communication plan is and what they're doing around the sacraments has been communicated through their parish council, then to the schools, and they're all doing it. So in some cases, the staff of the school has been invited in some cases they've cautioned because of maybe the size of the parish. So I'm at a smaller parish, so they're limited to just the family, so as many family members could be there. Having said that, I know at the local parishes just this weekend, things have opened up, so there may be more opportunities for participation from the school to actually be present. Then I also saw at some other churches that they did welcome the staff. So I think it's up to each parish to work with their schools and their community about how the school is involved in actually attending and participating, if that was what your question was.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Father Dave, anything else to add with that one?
Yeah, no, you summed it up well. I mean, it's basically parish to parish right now. We still got some restrictions, but it also depends on the size of the parish. Like bigger ones, it's a lot more difficult to do things in a smaller parish. But it's not really consistent across the board. But yeah, I guess that's the answer. It's parish to parish, but most of us, I think, are getting back into the schools in at least some capacity. So, and inviting schools to the parish as well. Anyway, long story short, it's different between parishes.
Thanks, Father Dave.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, Jerry.
Okay, terrific. Thank you very much, Nancy, for that thorough report and for taking all those questions. That's great. And we'll move right along then to our trustee update. Vice Chair Duarte, welcome, and please take us away.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. I'm on my phone and I'm the church office, so excuse me if you don't hear. So a little bit about what trustees are involved with. At the September 21st board meeting, there was a delegation on COVID protocols, which was accepted as information. 2 recommended names for the virtual school were put up by the naming committee, St. Clare of Assisi and Blessed Carlos Aquitis. The names were forwarded to the bishop's office for approval. At the same meeting, following policies were brought forth and were approved. Policy I-06, delegation to the board. Policy I-19, occupational health and safety. Policy I-46, correspondence to the Board of Trustees. Policy II-09, opening and closing exercises. Policy II-15, workplace violence. Policy II-16, workplace discrimination and harassment, and the HCDSB procedural bylaw. So moving forward, in-camera meetings will start at 6:30 p.m. Board meetings will start at 7 p.m. and go up to 11 p.m. After 11 p.m., we need 2/3 of the board members to be present to continue the meeting. And after 11:30, it will be unanimous. So it's a longer board meeting. Following policies at the same meeting were not approved, rescinding policy IB-0407, alternative arrangement for school facilities, and policy IB-08, school sites and operating budgets. At the October 5th board meeting, there was a delegation on supporting HCDSB diverse student body, which was accepted as information. St. Clare of Assisi was approved as the official name of the virtual school, as we have heard, and Bishop Crosby has given his approval there. So the name of the virtual school is St. Clare of Assisi. There was an action item for a review of the procedural bylaws to use the expertise of a parliamentarian to make a recommendation, and this was approved. The recommendations, once we receive them, will go to future policy meetings for discussion and debate. There was another action item on HCDSB attestation for vaccination disclosure, which did not pass. And other notable and upcoming items, on September 22nd, OCSTA conducted a leadership speaker series by Father Pena from Alberta This was a very powerful presentation, and Father talked about the gift of Catholic education and our obligations as trustees. I attended that. On October 8th, Faith Day was celebrated across the system, and some trustees attended the CEC liturgy. The next talk in the OCSTA Catholic Education Leadership Speaker Series will be on November 29th by Justice Peter Lawyers. And as things settle down now in school and school councils are now in place, trustees will be visiting schools, school council meetings, and school visits, which were stalled because of COVID. That's all for my report. Happy to answer any questions.
Go ahead, Maria.
You know what? I see Jen has her hand up, so I'm going to let her go ahead if that's okay, and I can go after.
By all means. Yep, Jen.
I can't hear. I can't hear.
Yeah, 1 sec, Marvin. Yeah.
Okay. Does that work?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good evening. Just a question with respect to the board and its stance right now. Is there any, and I'm sorry, I apologize if that was what you meant when you spoke earlier about vaccination attestation, but I haven't read the last board meeting minutes. Is there any, is the board considering at all mandating vaccination for staff?
At the moment, no. And I think Director Daly would be able to give more information on his meeting with the Deputy Minister. And that's more informative. Director Daly, would you like to comment on that part?
Yeah, I can comment on kind of the provincial stance, because the question does come up. It's come up weekly with the meetings with the minister, whether or not the ministry would mandate vaccinations either for staff and or for students over the age of 12. And the response by the government at this point has been they've not changed their position on vaccination, that it is that it's not mandatory. And they really do point to the pretty high vaccination rates across the province as an indicator that, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, as an indicator that, relying on people to go out and get the vaccine has seemed to be effective so far.
Okay, thank you. I was just curious because I thought that, was it Toronto perhaps had gone ahead and done that, but I could be mistaken, but I thought one of the boards had mandated that.
Yeah, and I think you're right. That there have been, I think there's one other board too, but the name escapes me right now. Our board has not moved to mandate vaccines for either staff or students. I don't know if any boards have done it for students, but a couple of boards have for staff.
Okay, thank you.
If I may, just kind of as a follow-on question to that, and probably this is for, again, more for you, Pat. Sorry, Marvin. But by all means, if there's been discussions at the trustee table, I'd like to hear that too, around the procedure and policy in place around rapid testing for staff and teachers that are not vaccinated. I tried to get some information around that, but it seemed to fall short a little bit, just in terms of gaining confidence as to that procedure. Because when I asked my local administration, it seemed that local admin, i.e. principals, don't know unequivocally whether or not their teachers have been following the testing, the rapid testing requirements of twice weekly, and reporting that that information back. So how is that being tracked? How is that being monitored? And how are we preventing cases from potentially getting into our schools? Well, I hope that question made sense, Pat. Anyway,
it does, absolutely. No, our principals are not tracking vaccination attestation. Our HR department is doing that. So teachers who are not vaccinated are required to submit twice weekly tests, and it's the human resources, I guess, attendance support people that are tracking that, as opposed to individual principals. And in the case, and I think people would probably know this, but in the case where a positive case comes up, whether it's a staff member or a student for that matter, public health does that contact tracing, and then the associated close contacts, if they're high risk, would be required to stay home, and obviously the person, whether it's a staff member or a student, would need to stay home and get tested and cleared before they were able to return to school.
Okay, so Pat, with the test results, the rapid test results twice weekly, is it a twice weekly attestation by the staff member, or is it?
No, it's the tests have to be submitted.
Okay, that's good. So in terms of will any, just in terms of in the spirit of transparency around this, and again giving parents comfort that the system is sound, it's being followed. Any reporting around it as to this is how, I mean, and again, all anonymized of course, and not named by school or by staff member obviously, but even on an aggregate basis, like this is how many we have that are submitting twice weekly. These have been the results. This percentage negative, this percentage positive, anything like that.
No, we haven't released that type of information yet, nor, and I don't want to say we're not doing it because we're not required to, Jerry, but that hasn't been the direction we've had from the province. I think in terms of whether or not measures are helping mitigate COVID, obviously there's a number of measures, vaccinations being one, and we all know the other one's masking and distancing and all those sorts of things. I think what we have found so far, we have had, I think, 3 outbreaks, maybe 4 now, across our 55 schools since the beginning of the school year. And an outbreak is two cases that are epidemiologically linked in one classroom, but they haven't gone beyond that. So I think that the contact tracing measures that public health has in place have been able to, I guess, help stop the spread.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Pat. I appreciate the extra information there. And again, what I would suggest or recommend for consideration, I guess, by the board, and Marvin, over to you, I guess, is just again, just in the spirit of transparency, and I mean, while still maintaining confidentiality and privacy, the more of that information that can be shared, I think the better we kind of serve the parents, right? Just giving them comfort and confidence that the system's working. So I'll leave it at that. I do think there's a follow-up question in the chats.
Yeah, I see that one, Jerry. So the question is, who covers the cost of the rapid testing? So the PCR screening kits that the board has received, we've received them from the ministry. So the ministry, government and consumer services has supplied those rapid tests for teachers.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And Marvin, did you want to add anything to this at all in terms of any discussions at the board trustees table?
No, not. We have a meeting coming up tomorrow, and The contents of that meeting, I'll report it in the next CPIC meeting, but if your concerns are very valid and you have great points, I think Director Daly might be able to give some information on the total overall percentage of vaccination across our system. Director Daly, you have any information there?
Off the top of my head, Vice Chair Duarte, I don't, but there is the information is posted publicly on our website. I can put the link in the chat box.
That'll be helpful. Yep.
Yep. That's great. Thank you for that. Okay. Yes, and coming back now to our Q&A. Maria, you were next in queue.
Yeah, hi. So I don't have questions per se, but I just have some feedback, and I had a couple of issues that I kind of wanted to bring forward to our trustee rep. And you know, when I work through my thoughts, I realize, you know, they're kind of related. It all has to do with how stakeholder feedback is being handled by the board. And I want to be clear that I'm not looking to get into debate as to the issues themselves, but rather how they're being handled. So, you know, the latest hot topic, controversial topic that's putting our board in the papers and everything else all over social media is this issue of non-Catholic student trustees. So again, I'm not looking to debate that the merits of that one way or the other, but just how this is being handled. So this policy was reviewed in December 2018, which I think was part of the usual 3-year cycle. And I don't think anything was brought up about non-Catholic student trustees. It came back in June of 2020, which trustees always have the prerogative to bring it back before its 3-year time. I understand that. And at that time, whoever brought it forward sought to remove the requirement for a letter from a parish priest. And looking at the minutes from that meeting, staff were very clear that they weren't in agreement with that removal. In fact, it's noted in the minutes twice because they reiterated that position. And that policy failed, and a proposal to bring it up forward to September failed. So that's June 2020. Then on April 6th of 2021, there was a delegation. It was received as information by the Board of Trustees, 6-2 in favor of receiving it as information. Yet it came back to the June Policy Committee, looking again to remove the requirement to have an endorsement from a parish priest. Again, it failed. The same student came back and delegated in June. The response was a staff report outlining student leadership opportunities. And the student wasn't happy with what they got in the staff report, so they delegated again in October. Again, 5 trustees voted to receive it as information. Yet somehow this policy came back to the policy committee last week. And there's another delegation tomorrow. I very much value the delegation process, and I've utilized it many times myself. But I'm also aware that there's a rule. You can't delegate twice on the same topic, but we've had the same student come back 3 times. And I know other delegates have been rejected, you know, for that reason, even though they tried to sort of change things up to make it a bit different. And I just, you know, I've also read the Integrity Commission's report, and it talks about dilatory behavior. And I know, and that the dilatory behavior reflects the factionalism of the board. And it talks about different procedural steps that have been used to delay votes when there is clearly insufficient support for a motion. Now, I know that dilatory behavior, I think, usually refers to sort of procedural issues, but to me, when people are allowed to delegate multiple times on the same topic, contrary to board policy, and when trustees keep bringing an item back when they know that there isn't support at the board table, that is essentially the same as dilatory behavior. And it has the same effect of contributing to the factionalism of the board and wasting time that could be spent on other matters. So, you know, I want to share that with you, Marvin. I know you're vice chair, so I think that you have some influence on the agenda. And, you know, then I think about other items, you know, obviously this has taken a lot of time. And again, it's in the press, and it's just, it leads to a lot of the sort of this ugliness that we've been seeing for quite some time now. And then on the other hand, you know, what makes it also troubling is on the other hand, there's other feedback that's just not being addressed. So we've had 2 of our CIAC associations submitted minority reports, raising some significant concerns, including whether or not the board's in compliance with the Education Act. And none of that's been addressed. So we have one item that keeps coming back, even though trustees' position is pretty clear, and other items that just aren't being addressed. But what should be of really particular concern to this committee, and again, it's along the same lines, is the board ignoring recommendations from a Catholic School Council, which is in fact contrary to the regulation 612, which governs school councils and CPIC. And again, our school council, and again, it's on the topic of exams, but I'm not looking to, we've talked about that. But I'm not looking to debate that issue, but just the fact that our school council made a recommendation on June 11th, and we didn't receive a response. And it was on a topic that's specifically regarding student achievement and well-being, because, the fact that these students are going to be facing exams when they leave our board is also an issue of their mental health, their future mental health. We followed up on June 25th, and we still didn't get a response, not even an acknowledgement. We didn't get a response until September 3rd, at which time, we referred to reporting non-compliance to the deputy minister. So I didn't really want to go down that road, but it seemed to be after that we finally did get a response. So, it shouldn't even have, the legislation clearly states that this is the primary way that school councils achieve their purposes, by making recommendations to the board. And in the regulation, it states that boards are required to provide a response. I don't think that's something that should have to be even in the legislation, because it should just, to me, that's common courtesy. But it is. And again, there's been no action from trustees on this. And we copied CPIC as well on that reply, and we didn't get support from CPIC on it either. And it makes it really hard to believe that the board places value on the role of school council. I've heard it many times over the years from different parents, people that have been on council and haven't gone back because they feel it's useless. They can't accomplish anything. And when the board doesn't respond to a recommendation from a school council, that kind of perpetuates that sentiment. And I think CPIC, being the committee that's charged with encouraging parent engagement and supporting parent councils, we should be concerned about this. So, I have to ask, do trustees value the role of school councils? Does CPIC value the role of the staff? Because it doesn't feel like it.
Thank you, Maria. You have a whole lot of questions there. So I'll start with the last question. Does the board value school council feedback? Yes, we definitely do. So, and then going back to your previous question, you sent some correspondence which did not get responded in a timely way. So first of all, nobody's perfect. Okay, so we do have our regular jobs, we have regular lives, but we definitely have this as a priority to respond to correspondence. And the correspondence policy has just been updated, and I think it's 24 or 48 hours to get a response. And we may have skipped a couple of times, yes, but are we intending to do that moving forward? No, we are going to be working on improving the process. Okay, we do value the feedback given, and I think Superintendent Dinalfo also said we heard that. We will discuss that internally, and yes, keep sending the information. And if at all you do not hear a response, please do send the feedback a question, because it's not only your question that the board and staff is dealing with. We have the pandemic happening right now, which we are going through. We have challenges in schools. We have taken questions from parents, questions from the community, and so many things happening at the same time. So we are not perfect, as I said, and you have to give us the benefit of doubt and keep asking the questions and keep providing your feedback. Don't be disheartened. So,
well, Marvin, I think I'm not shy. I do keep asking, but You know, but sometimes, yeah, I ask multiple times and don't receive a response. But I want to be clear that I'm not, you know, it is an issue with correspondence in general as well. But I'm really specifically wanting to address a recommendation from a school council, which I don't think happens often. And I think, you know, school councils have become something different than what they're really intended in the legislation. And that's sort of a bigger conversation. But again, the legislation is pretty clear that this is how we achieve our purpose, is by making recommendations. So when a board fails to respond to that, I understand nobody's perfect. I'm not expecting that. I'm not perfect either. But you know, it is a recommendation from a school council, so it's pretty official. And we did have to follow up 3 times. So, you know, I think it would have been, it's reasonable to have expected something sooner than that.
We'll do better.
Yeah, that's recorded now. So thank you.
Okay. Jordan, do you have a question?
Hi, I was just going to ask if other staff other than teachers have to follow the double rapid testing a week. For example, custodians.
So I'm going to bounce that to Director Daly.
Yeah, thanks, Jordan. And I did put something in the chat, but the procedure does apply to all staff. So teaching staff, support staff, transportation staff, volunteers who are frequently in the building. So it's not just teaching staff.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, very good. Okay, I don't see any other hands up. Last call for questions for Vice Chair Duarte. Nope. Okay, thanks again, Vice Chair Duarte.
Thank you.
Always appreciate
Thank you so much. Take care.
Insights. Thank you. Okay, now moving on to our standing items. Denise, if you would kindly provide update from OAPSE.
Okay, thank you. In terms of OAPSE, at the last CPIC meeting that I couldn't attend, unfortunately, I did mention hopefully that we did have a board of directors meeting October the 3rd, and there'll be another upcoming meeting October the 25th for us as directors. It's an actual training meeting to review the roles and responsibilities, as there are a number of new directors that have come on board as well from different school boards. As far as our board is concerned, and for OAPSE, much appreciative of the fact that it was mentioned that school council is coming forward and having OAPSE reps chosen. I've been communicating with some of them direct through my email at OAPSE Halton. And I did have a conversation through the email with Andrea on waiting for a list of OAPSE reps that I know she's working on to communicate with me in terms of reaching out to them, because there's a number of things that I need to send to them. One is a welcome template that I have ready to welcome them as OAPSE reps for this year. The other piece is to communicate that November 3rd at our council of chairs, our first council of chairs, is traditionally the commissioning ceremony for all of our reps. So it's important that they have this communicated in advance, and the names obviously are important to have the link to attend. That commissioning ceremony also involves a blessing from Father Dave. So Father Dave, I'll be sending you the program as to your part in that commissioning ceremony in advance, so that you're aware of what needs to be read out in terms of that particular date. Also, I'm planning this year to have a new to role training for our OAPSE reps. I'm working on a PowerPoint presentation, and I'm going to give a shout out to Dufferin Peel OAPSI group, because they are kindly sharing some of their ideas with me as I put that together. And I'd like to have that tentative training. I'm looking at the week after our commissioning ceremony, which is I'm looking at November 10th. Now, again, that information would have to go out, but it's also, I'm not sure about the vehicle in which to present this. So I know we've done another OAPSI meeting last year that we did with our reps, with our executive director, and that came through OAPSI. But I'm not sure if this particular meeting, because it's direct with our reps, should, and she's not part of this, the executive director, it would mean myself leading that particular meeting, should come through our board in terms of the format. So I'm open to ideas. I can go back through OAPSI and ask them to set it up through Zoom, but I'd much prefer if it comes through our board to help with that. So that's something up for discussion as well. And as far as OAPSI events go, I don't have a date yet because we're still in the planning, but there will be a virtual parent event planned at the end of November. For our OAPSI reps and any other parents that they communicate with through their school councils that wish to attend this particular event. So that's it for me. I'm happy to take any questions on this, in particular because of the commissioning ceremony coming up and the new to role training. If there are any, I'll probably be communicating a lot more with Nancy and Andrea too, but anybody else that has a question at this point. No, it looks like we're good, Jerry.
Yeah, looks like
Okay.
as
All
usual, you're thorough and complete, Denise. So
all right, thanks, Jerry.
thank you. Look forward to the commissioning ceremony at the upcoming council
It
chairs.
shouldn't be in terms of, I know we're going to discuss the council chairs thing, but I'm not looking for more than like 10 minutes in terms of that in total. So.
Yep, no problem. No problem at all.
Yep.
Great, thank you. All right. Okay, moving right along then to our CPIC committee subcommittees. And this is, of course, the set time in our agenda for updates from the various committees. And we have representatives named there to provide those updates. So starting off with our school council support committee, Tiana, would you mind providing whatever updates you have?
Hi, thank you, Jerry. We had our subcommittee actually had the opportunity to meet last week. We did get a copy of the handbook, school council handbook, sent out to, we ended up sending it to Jen with our comments and recommendations and some adjustments. So we did manage to get that out last week. Hopefully you guys have it to make any other changes and suggestions. So when we did have our meeting, we talked a little bit about the handbook and the goals that we'd like to see with the handbook. The other thing we did too is we decided to take a look at the set up some goals for the subcommittee. And the goals that we looked at are number one, to get the handbook out and in use for everyone. So whatever more help is needed in that area, we are more than willing to contribute. The other objective we had on our list was to try and develop, and this is something we did discuss last year, so it's an outstanding goal on the list, to develop some type of virtual platform where school councils can share information, best practices, things like that. So all school councils across the board can contribute information, utilize this platform for information, things like that. So that was another thing that's on our objective list that we'll be looking at a little bit more this year once the handbook is out and distributed. And we came up with a new objective as well, a third objective. It's a little bit exciting. One of the things we thought of was the question came about is, do school councils communicate with each other? And through our discussions, we found that we're not really seeing a lot of communication between the different schools together. So we thought of developing an objective, to help school councils communicate with each other and on smaller platforms. So of course we've got this virtual platform that we're thinking that people can communicate with, and but this secondary platform would be more to focus, say, in the family of schools area, where we can set up maybe some type of communication within those school councils, with them being a tighter community, and sharing best practices and things like that on a more smaller level. And basically, we were thinking of the motto of parents helping parents. So that's where our meeting came up with those objectives. And we're looking forward to working on those items over this next year. So I think that's about it. If anybody has any questions, or if anybody else from the group wants to contribute a comment.
Great, Tiana, thanks. Maria, you have a question?
I have a comment and a question. So I love the idea of finding ways for school councils to communicate with each other. Something that I have often felt was missing. My only suggestion would be, and because I'm a secondary parent now, well, I have been for some time, but I don't know how much. I think secondary councils are very different from elementary. So I'd like to find a way that secondary councils can communicate with each other in addition to or instead of the family of school piece. And I know when we did our letter last year about the exams, I wanted to share it with other school councils, and we were eventually able to do so, but we had to jump through some hoops to get permission and so on, which I found a little bureaucratic, I guess, for lack of a better word. So it would be great if there was a way that we could just reach out to each other, because I think, we share a lot of the same issues, right? And they would be different from elementary school issues. So really like that idea, but would like to see something at the secondary level specifically. And then a question that I have is, so this handbook that you've been working on, I'm wondering if it does it address annual reports? School council and CPIC annual reports.
Okay, so when I was reviewing let me ask just respond to your first part first.
Sure.
Thanks for that feedback. And it's funny because that's one of the things I was thinking about, that yes, the idea of the family of schools, but my thought was too, secondary schools are a little different in their requirements. So my thought was also to set up some type of, not just my thoughts, our thoughts are to set up maybe some type of communication in that area as well. But with it being a brand new objective, we just haven't gotten that far with it yet. So I do appreciate that feedback, and it'll definitely be incorporated into our objective list under that third objective there. So thank you. With regards to annual reports, when I went through the handbook, I did not see anything in there regarding annual reports. The handbook is focused for school councils, so not so much for CPIC. It's more as a tool CPIC will provide to school councils. It explains a little bit of what CPIC does, but it's not a handbook for CPIC. It's more a handbook for the actual school councils. I did not see anything in there about annual reports. What they had there was a lot of definitions, descriptions of positions, explanations of what a school council is. And then, of course, they had a bunch of stuff too with regards to examples of agendas, meetings, bylaws, things like that. They had a lot of appendices for that stuff. So with regards to annual reports, I didn't see anything in that. So what kind of annual reports would you be referring to?
Well, so this is interesting. And I'd actually like to see this come back as a future agenda item for us to discuss as a bigger group, because I'm not sure if everyone's aware. So the regulation, the government regulation, as well as our board policies, which comply with the regulation, require school councils to complete an annual report every year, and it's supposed to be shared with the community. So I know there's a little process that I saw this year as chair. There was a form to fill out. It had some very, very basic information. I don't know how many schools actually shared it with their communities, and it it didn't have any financial component. And if you read the regulation, and I can't remember what our policy says, but any school that participates in fundraising is required to have a financial component to their annual report. And you know, not just being in the regulation, but I think it's an important thing because, you know, parents put a lot of effort into fundraising, and I you know, more at the elementary level, but you know, we would have a big pasta night and parents worked a ton on it. And I would hear from parents like, are we ever going to find out how much we made? Like the school, nobody communicated how much we made even, or what the money was spent on. So things like that. So yes, it's required by the regulation, but I also think it's good practice for a lot of good reasons. And I think if people know, you know, what the needs are and what they're fundraising for and what they actually bought, I think it, you know, really encourages it more. But there seems to be, you know, some pushback sometimes about that piece. That's one component. But even just, you know, and I understand, like, not every school council is going to want to do a more meaningful report. If they just want to do a basic report, I mean, you can't force them, but, you know, there should be kind of an opportunity to put together a more meaningful report. And I have seen it many, many years ago. So I think it's an item that warrants a bigger discussion. You know, and the fact that it's missing from the handbook, I think, is kind of telling. So yeah, that's what I'm referring to there. And I don't know if CPIC did an annual report. That's supposed to be, you know, again, I think right in our policy, it says that it's supposed to be posted on the website, including a financial piece. But I've never seen that, so I don't know if it's hiding somewhere. But
so Maria, I think it definitely beyond the scope of our subcommittee regarding school council support, but I was just checking in the background here. So I know, you know, 100% of schools submitted their annual reports last year. As for the financial component, I know locally, you know, within our own school council, we get and provide an update on the financial side with every meeting, and that gets shared within our school community, which is probably frankly the best way for that to happen rather than once a year. That way the reporting and transparency is there all year long. And to your point, perhaps some encouragement around let's get involved in the fundraising, because we're doing some pretty cool stuff with all those funds that we're raising. Excuse me, for school generated funds. But yeah, we can definitely table this again if we think it's warranted to table it and see how we can bolster that process.
Yeah, so just some clarification. So I do understand that schools submitted their reports to CPIC or to staff or whatever, but again, the requirement is clear that it should be shared with the school community. Like, it's not should, it shall or must or whatever the wording is. So I don't know that piece happened. And I agree with you. I think ongoing financial reporting is the best way to do it. I was just referring to I was specifically talking about the annual report, and it is specifically stated as a requirement there. But, you know, and it's kind of frustrating because I'll hear that from someone like you on a council like yours. And I often would hear at the board meetings, and I've been hearing it for years, how, you know, every school council decides, you know, how the funds are going to be spent. Well, you know what? They don't. I've been on a number that don't. And I've had challenges and faced obstacles just to get that information from principals. So it's not consistent across the board. It's
gotcha.
Right,
so Maria, sorry, can I stop you there? Just because I'm being conscious that we're already over time on our agenda, but to suffice to say, let's bring this back and discuss it further. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's what I was, and I agree with you, and I think I did say that to bring it back because I know it's a bigger topic that needs its own
airtime
time on the agenda.
Sure. Yep, definitely. Okay, thanks for that. Jen, do you have a question for Tiana?
Sorry, not a question. Just wanted to relay to Tiana that we did receive the draft handbook. Sorry, I'm waiting for Jerry to turn off the sound. And Jerry and I are in the process of going through it, and we're trying to merge the document as well. It's going to take a little bit longer than we had anticipated. We were hoping to have it ready for the November 3rd Council of Chairs meeting, but it won't be ready for in time. for that, which is fine because it sounds like we do have some additions to make to that, because to Maria's point, the handbook itself, the way it's written right now, is primarily an operational document as to how the committee gets established, how the meetings are run, you know, what templates look like, what everyone's roles and responsibilities are. So I don't want to belabor the point here. We will add this to a future agenda item. Thanks, Jerry.
Okay, thanks, Jen. Okay, so I don't see any other hands up for Tiana or the School Council Support Committee. So move on to Parent Community Parish Engagement Committee. Jordan, if you would.
Hi, sorry, my part has really been pushed back, and I'm in my vehicle now, so I apologize if anybody can't hear me correctly. So my subcommittee met, and unfortunately, there was only 3 of us that were able to make the meeting. We very much look forward to other people joining our meetings to get some more ideas. We did talk about some of the challenges right now with COVID and not being able to have people gather, and that really has created a barrier to bringing together the community school of Parish. We did discuss possibly putting together some social groups that would be virtual for now until more things can be lifted, that would connect students to the parish. Like I said, there was only 3 of us there, so it was a pretty quick meeting, and we really look forward to anybody bringing some ideas to us. I think as of right now, we're just looking at creating virtual social groups.
Okay, very good, Jordan. Any questions or commentary for Jordan or the Parent Community Parish Committee? Maria, I'm not sure if your hand was up from before, but I'll just jump to Alex.
Yes, I was wondering if I at some point can become part of any of the subcommittees. If it's possible to be part of the Parent Community Parish Engagement Committee, and if you can just, I don't know, send me an email or something to see how we can meet, I would love to participate and bring a couple of ideas to engage the community.
Yep, terrific, Alex. I don't see any issue with that at all. That's great. Your insights will be surely valued there. Thank you. Okay. So sorry, Maria, is that hand up from before, or do you have something for that committee?
Sorry, I just forgot to put my hand up, and I actually had stepped away, so I apologize.
Okay, no worries. Okay, thank you. Okay, very good. Thank you, Jordan, and the rest of the committee. We look forward to, you know, obviously, hopefully that whole committee being able to get together now with the addition of Alex as well, so you guys can continue your efforts there. You know, because again, you know, certainly not an area where we want to fall down in as a parent committee. So looking forward to advancement there. Thank you. As for bylaws, we actually have not met yet this year. We have carried over our work from last year to continue to work through individual bylaws. So further updates next time around after we've actually had a meeting. Okay. All right, so on to CPIC representation on our board committees. Jordan, back to you for mental health board committee, if you would.
There hasn't been anything yet. I haven't gotten any communication from anybody regarding that committee.
Okay. Do we know, should there have been by now? No?
Thank you, Jerry. Jordan, I will follow up, but I do believe the leave for our mental health committee is actually on a leave, and so that whole committee hasn't come together just yet again, okay? But I'll make sure that you're included on any communication from them.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Nancy, and thank you, Jordan. Moving on to Homeschool Parish Partnership, Violetta.
Hi, everyone. First, I want to welcome Alex to joining our committee and look forward to hearing her ideas. Just echoing Jordan's comment, right now virtual adaptation outside of liturgy is really difficult based on the technological knowledge of each parish. So there are not many initiatives that are taking place at the moment. All parish keep following COVID protocols like social distancing of 6 feet apart, but family meetings are not happening at the time, and it's basically because they are logically complicated. So in our committee, basically, it's one goal that we have, which is try to get back to schools to connect for liturgies, and it boils down to invite more families to get back to church for Sunday Mass. We keep brainstorming on ideas to reintroduce kids to go back to church. And with Alex joining our committees, I think that we will have more coming in the next meeting for everyone to comment.
Okay, thank you, Violetta. Couple hands up there, Maria.
I don't have my hand up on my end. I thought I took it down, so sorry.
Weird. Okay, no worries. Yeah, it just dropped off.
Or you just automatically assume I have my hand up for each thing.
It's a perma hand. Very good. Alex?
Yes. I am so how to say, positively impressed to see how much work has been put in these last years that I haven't been in CPIC. I think with the pandemic and the changes that we've lived in the last year and a half, we really have to, brainstorm and come with really creative ideas. But I think this is a good time to get together. So I'm looking forward to get to meet all of you and just be part of these committees that I know make a huge difference in the parents. Now that my kids are graduated, I see all the little tokens that each of the teachers and principals and priests have put in their lives. So I'm looking forward to work with you to keep extending that to the new families, especially those families that are starting at the schools in JK and SK and that are just starting to experience what is being in a Catholic school. I think it's very rewarding if they can see that a committee like CPIC is looking to them and how they can be engaged in different ways despite all the challenges that we have right now.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, great. Thanks, Alice. Again, looking forward to your participation there. Okay, on to our next one, Walk with Jesus Committee. Tiana.
Hi, thank you, Jerry. I don't think we've met yet. I know I haven't been invited yet, but I think it's still a little early because it usually happens in May. So there's nothing to report at this time.
Okay, very well, thank you. And de-streaming and equity audit, Jen.
Thanks, Jerry. There's been no meeting for de-streaming. We're expecting to have our next meeting later in November after the first quadrimester is done. And we have not had a further equity meeting since our last our CPIC meeting.
Okay, very good, Jen. Thank you for that. We look forward to those further updates as those committees get underway later in the year. Yes, Alex.
Sorry. I just have a question. Oh, sorry. So, I don't know. I am hearing myself. Did I do something wrong? Sorry. That's okay. So I was wondering if you, if the Focus on Faith committee is still taking place. I know for a couple of years I participated in it, and it was a very enlightening committee for me because there were representatives of every of elementary schools, high schools, librarians, and I know it was really a great opportunity to understand a little bit more how things are happening board-wise and how we can in CPIC participate, engaging the parents in this kind of initiative. So I was wondering if that committee is still running, and if we're still, if they still need a member of CPIC to be part of it.
Thank you for that question, Alex. Lori Nard does have the Focus on Faith Committee, and so we can have a CPIC representative on there. Alex, would you like to be the representative on there?
Oh, yes, I would love to.
Okay, I'll pass your name on to Lori Nard.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Great. Okay, thanks one and all for the updates. And again, we look forward to further updates as those committees get more down the path on their work. Okay, so next up, it's a couple of discussion items remaining on our agenda. And let's see how we do for time here. Okay, so we have our upcoming Council of Chairs meeting November 3rd, rapidly approaching. So we have a few agenda item placeholders, as you see there, that we've circled back on and have tentatively not lined up. CIAC with a brief presentation. Nancy, I believe you just mentioned the strat plan is not going to be able to. Pardon me? We're going to postpone that one. Okay, not quite ready to have that presentation yet, or breakout for that matter. So stay tuned on that one. HCCF, we typically provide them an opportunity each year to get up and present to the Council of Chairs as to their endeavors for the coming year, what they look like. So we've allotted some time for the director there, Mark Clare, and then de-streaming. And Jen, did you want to speak to this one? No.
Jerry, with the de-streaming, what we had discussed was last year when we had the presentation, I believe it was in May. At that time, the curriculum wasn't available and hadn't been shared. So we do have the curriculum now. So just to bring that back to through the Council of Chairs so that parents can see what the new curriculum looks like and then be able to discuss it. And we have a new superintendent, M. Del Sordo, who is overseeing the de-streaming program. And so we can actually get some feedback from M about how that's looking and what it's going through when we finish that, almost finished that first quadmester with our first de-stream grade 9 math course. Okay. The other thing is, so as mentioned, the strategic plan, we will bring it back to a Council of Chairs meeting. That committee is not ready to bring it for stakeholder feedback. So once they are, then they'll come through our Council of Chairs meeting. So I do think we have a little bit more time at our Council of Chairs meeting in November to add one more item. In light of a lot of the discussion we've had about the financial pieces that we could maybe do with the Catholic Councils of Chairs at that meeting is just go through that plan of what that looks like. So because it's maybe not in the handbook that committee is working on, maybe I can bring some feedback to that and present it and then give the Council of Chairs an opportunity to actually work through it or talk about it with their family schools if the group feels that would be a valuable activity for them to do. I'll let you decide.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for that, Nancy. So of course, what's not listed on here, as previously mentioned, we also on the agenda will be the OAPC commissioning ceremony. So about another 10-minute segment there. So just we'll add that, of course, to our notes. Now I do see a couple of hands up here. So by all means, let's go around the table and see what else we potentially could have in the upcoming meeting. Alex, go ahead.
No, I don't have my hand.
Very strange. I'm seeing hands up that aren't there. You did, eh? Okay, thanks, Andrea. See, I'm not going crazy. All right, Maria.
Yeah, I just not so much adding anything. I do like the suggestion from Superintendent D'Onofrio to add the financial piece. I think that would be really helpful. I think we need to sort of establish the culture that that's okay and maybe even expected to be done. And I just was wondering about the CX piece, and I don't know if that's still going forward. I don't know if I missed something there, but I'm on CIAC and I'm vice chair of CIAC and I wasn't aware of this. So I'm just wondering who's presenting there and what it's about, if anyone knows.
Maria, Trustee Agnew has brought that forward through me that CIAC would like to do a 5 to 10 minute presentation so that they could share with council chairs what CIAC does, what their role is, and the various committees, subcommittees that they have on CIAC.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay. All right. Is there anything anyone else wanted to bring forward as potential agenda items for the council chairs? Okay, so not at this time, and of course, at any time, any of our committee members have thoughts around that, whether it be for this upcoming one or even for a future one. Some topic that perhaps is bubbling up in your own community and you think would warrant time in the agenda. Please do bring it forward. Just send an email to Jen and myself, and we'll absolutely include it in our future discussions. So. We'll leave it at that for now, but as I said, if there's anything else after the fact, please do email us as soon as possible and let us know. Okay, last discussion item on the agenda here. Now we are approaching 9 p.m., which would put us 30 minutes over time, which will require a simple majority to extend the time. I know this discussion will take more than 3 minutes, so if I may, if we can have that vote now to extend by, what is it, by half an hour increments, Nancy? Yeah. So, and hopefully we won't take another half hour, folks, but if we could just go around to the members and ask if it would be okay if we extend our time by 30 minutes. And so let's do it this way. I'll start with you, Jen.
I agree.
Okay, Jen agrees. Alex?
Agree.
Okay. Kevin?
Agree.
Laura?
Agree.
Maria?
Agree.
Sarah? Okay, Tiana?
Agree.
Okay, Violetta?
Agree.
Okay, Sarah, are you there? That's okay. Clearly the majority are okay with extending the time. Thank you all. Appreciate the extra time. Okay, so this discussion on voting member clarification, and this came up last year during our discussions at the bylaw subcommittee, and it was something that we did want to bring before the larger committee for discussion and for discernment. So the question was, and actually, sorry, Maria, this was your agenda item. I should let you run with it. But that was a bit of the background, folks. So Maria, if you want to go ahead.
Sure. So I guess we have discussed this quite a bit in our bylaw subcommittee, and there's disagreement, I guess, as to how some of our reps, what their position is on the committee. To me, it's very clear in the regulation. The regulation sets out what positions a CPIC or a PIC must have and what positions it may have. And that list of positions that may be on a committee are limited. It doesn't really provide for additional positions. Community reps are part of the must-have, but it does allow committees to decide how many, with a limit of 3. And the regulation is also very clear that community reps have voting rights. Parent members and community members have voting rights. So the only people that don't are trustees and staff. Now, in the board procedure, it lists out that CPIC would have 3 community reps, and under that, indented under there, is the OAPSE rep, the deanery rep, and I guess just general community rep. Now, when we were reviewing the bylaws, we brought them back to the committee just as sort of an initial cleanup. And that section, the formatting was off. What I didn't realize, and I fault myself for not being on top of it, but when that was cleaned up, it also was changed in a way that created a substantive change. And it now says we have a community rep and we have 2 additional representatives, which are now the OAPSE rep and the deanery rep as additional reps, not community reps. That doesn't line up with the regulation or the board procedure. That's my position. I feel to me, it's very clear. But there's some disagreement on that some are saying those positions are not community reps and therefore don't have voting rights. And I did reach out. I know that a lot of other Catholic boards have OAPSE reps as kind of a standing community rep position. So I reached out to the executive director of OAPSE. We didn't have a chance to talk, but exchanged some messages. And I didn't provide any of the background. I just sort of asked a simple question. Do OAPSE reps normally have voting rights? And she seemed surprised at that question and sort of said, well, why would they be there if they didn't? I've also reviewed a number of other Catholic boards' CPIC bylaws, and some of them are unclear, but there's no other board that has additional reps. You're either a parent member, community member, or staff or trustees. And a couple of them, Dufferin Peel Catholic and Hamilton Wentworth Catholic, specifically identify as OAPSE rep, their OAPSE reps as being community members, and then go on to say that community members are voting members. Now, the Hamilton Wentworth doesn't have an OAPSE rep, but it does have a representative of the diocese. And again, it says, shall include 2 community members, a CPIC member, and a representative of the diocese, and that community members are voting members. Dufferin Peel has 3, which is a diocesan rep, an OAPSE rep, and a CPIC rep. So a lot of these CPICs or PICs as well have CPIC reps on them, but they identify them as community members and therefore voting members. So I know it was when we were debating this and we weren't agreeing, it was suggested it come back to CPIC for a vote. To me, it's not. To me, the bylaws were changed in error, and so they should be reverted back to how they were, to line up with the procedure, to line up with the regulation. I don't see it as a voting issue because we can't vote to be offside of board procedure or especially the regulation. So that's kind of my position on it. I don't know if I have anything more to say at this point, but that's why it's been brought forward to the committee.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Maria, for providing the background and the purpose for it, for the discussion item. So yeah, this and again, it is a discussion item, so let's discuss it. I see Denise, you got your hand up.
Hi. So I just like to just follow up with what Maria said. She's correct in terms of the other boards, in terms of their OAPC directors. Not all boards have OAPC directors, so that is correct as well. So I can't speak to them. The ones that do have voting rights. In terms of my particular terms here, the term being on term here, at one point I did have voting rights. When I took over the position from someone else that was being passed to me and attend, at that point, that other person that I succeeded had voting rights, and I initially had voting rights and then did not have voting rights. So she is correct in that summation.
That's interesting, Denise. Do you know why it changed?
Nope, I have no idea. I don't remember in terms of, I mean, in terms of the bylaw reviews, all I can say to you is that I can't go back in terms of, I only have the distinct memory of yourself coming on as a co-chair, and that's when there was a review of bylaws. So I can't go back into, because I remember there was a review of bylaws, but not affecting the position of the OAPC director at that time. So I actually can't even pinpoint when that would have happened. But I know that when I took over the position, there was a voting right for the OAPC director, and I did have rights prior, yes.
Right. Yeah, and for my part, as long as I've been on the committee, the bylaws, they never changed until last year. And again, it was meant, as Maria described, it was meant to be a cleanup exercise without making substantive changes.
Right.
And then we took that, we're taking that up this year to look at each bylaw as it on its own merits. So yeah, I mean, my former the former chair at the time, that was kind of on her plate, but nothing really changed with that. And since I've been on board, only the elected community rep, as in elected by CPIC itself, was the only one who had voting rights.
Mm-hmm.
So what happened prior, I don't know. Alex, thank you. You read my mind. I was just going to draw on you, because I know you certainly predated me on this committee. Can you provide your own recollection of what was in place before?
This is like ancient history. So I recall for sure that the OAPC rep, as Denise said, had voting rights until the first year. I think that Denise was there. Then there was like a hiatus and a change in, I can't really remember right now why, but there was like a change where we started to do the open meetings and many more members. And I think that was you Gary, were in that first group of members of the community that were joining the committee. I think at that time, somehow we missed it. It wasn't really, in my mind, officially like an item in the agenda where we were talking about the OAPC rep not having voting rights, but I think it just happened at some point. But I for sure recall that Denise at the beginning and the previous OAPC rep had that voting rights.
Okay. And do you recall if the deanery representative was voting as well or not?
Let me think.
Alex, I think he did.
Yes, because I know when we went around the table, whoever father was there at that time, they would have the voting rights and the same as the OAPC rep. We always took them on account for that, and of course the community rep, because that was the purpose of having them in the committee, that they represent the community and they join the parents in the decisions made by CPIC.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Alex. Marvin, I think you were up next. Vice Chair Duarte.
Yeah, I won't jump into the discussion, but just a thought. When we have doubts and when we have no clarity, we can always seek legal opinion, and I think Director Daly will be happy to get you that opinion, because there's always this doubt and it's not clear.
Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, I don't know. Not sure if we'll have to let's see how this fleshes out through this discussion. So what I would share from how it was explained to me at the time was that only the elected positions or otherwise appointed by or within the board, i.e., parent reps, obviously, that are duly elected by the parent body at large, and then the community rep in the context of for in this case Alex, is elected or acclaimed in this case by CPIC itself. So all decided and determined by parent representation within the board. And that, of course, so I mean, the OAPSE director is appointed by OAPSE, and the deanery representative is appointed by the deanery. So not by parents, by the parent body. And that was the distinction between voting and non-voting, and of course, for obvious reasons, board members and staff and whatnot don't vote either. So excuse me. So that was the premise, and I'll be very frank and honest. I wasn't aware that a deanery and OAPSE had voting rights in the past, and that's somehow changed. It's unfortunate we don't have the resident knowledge as to why that changed, but it did. So here we are, and I think really, and as far as a legal opinion goes, I don't know if it comes down to legalities rather than, I mean, the regs, from what I read, they don't contemplate. The way I read it is that it's appointments made within and by the board and by parents, not by third parties or outside. I shouldn't say outside parties, because clearly they're a part of us and part of our community, but by third parties, non-parent representation, and yeah, and the regs don't contemplate specifically a Catholic PIC. All right, they just contemplate PICs, parent involvement committees. So there's no specificity in there in the regs around an OAPSE rep, a deanery rep, or others that would. So therefore it comes back to our bylaws. Right. So then, therefore, I mean, we as the committee set these bylaws. So it sounds like other PICs and CPICs do give voting rights to other community members other than the elected or appointed ones from within the parent body. Does that necessarily mean that we have to? I don't. That's one point I disagree with you on, Maria. The regs don't say that. I know you read it that way, but I don't see it that way. So I think it's down to this committee deciding what's appropriate for us. And
sorry.
Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Sorry, what are you saying that the regs don't say?
I'm just saying the regs don't contemplate third-party appointments of community reps. Right. These are all appointments made by us, frankly, as the parents.
So I don't have I should have had the reg in front of me, but I certainly have spent a lot of time reading it, not recently. But it doesn't make any distinction between appointed or elected. It does give individual PICs the right to decide in their bylaws how different members come to that position, whether it's appointment or election. And I think parent members can be appointed as well if the bylaws were written that way. There's no distinction on voting rights that's based on whether you're appointed or elected. I don't know that any part of the Education Act really provides for, if you're a public board, you do this, if, like, other than obviously specific things related to religion, but in terms of governance issues, I don't know that I've seen that elsewhere. I think that by having those community rep positions, that's where different boards can sort of customize, something that meets their local needs, right? And with Catholic boards, we have some Catholic pieces in there. I find it concerning that, well, sorry, and just one thing I want to say, I think to me it's, I'm not a lawyer, but to me the regulation's pretty clear. I hate to spend money on a legal opinion, but if that's what needs to happen, then, so be it. But to me, it's pretty clear. The fact that, no other board, every other board sort of seems to do it this way. Any diocesan rep that I've come across or OAPC rep is identified as a community rep and does have voting rights. It is set out like that in our procedures. But it's very concerning to me. How does something like this change? Just changes and there's no sort of trail of that. And I know it's all new people here.
Well, maybe there is. Maybe there is, Maria. It's a good point. I mean, if we go back to the minutes, I mean, from Alex's, and again, not to peg it on Alex's recollection, but if we go back to the minutes of the meetings from around that time, perhaps we will uncover that discussion and that decision. I wonder how readily we could go back and review. Yeah. Okay. I'm getting head nods here that we can do that.
Okay.
So maybe that'd be worth doing just to get if we can enlighten ourselves.
I think, this is purely speculation on my part, but I read something that I hadn't picked up on before, but one time through the reg, I picked this up and I hadn't really noticed it. This may explain what happened. While the regulation's clear that community members have voting rights, it does say somewhere that for the election of chair and co-chairs, vice chairs, all of that, only parent members can vote for that position. So I don't know if that caused some confusion and somebody thought that meant all voting. It makes sense for chairs and co-chairs because you have to be a parent member to be a chair or a co-chair, right? So your voting is limited to the group that can be in that position. So I don't know if that might have caused some confusion. To your earlier point, and again, I don't have the regulation in front of me, but I did look at it today, and I had meant to write down the section numbers, and I can certainly follow up with it. But the regulation says, every parent involvement committee shall have these positions, and community reps are listed there, although it references the bylaws. And then it says, parent involvement committees may have these positions. And again, it lists them specifically. So to me, I think legally that sort of sets the parameters of who you must and who you may have. And I don't think it allows for adding anything beyond that, whether you're a Catholic board or not. So I guess we can agree to disagree on that. But it may have been the chair / co-chair election that caused some confusion on the voting rights piece. I don't know. I'm totally guessing, but it just seems odd to me that it would just suddenly change and nobody seems to know why. Anyway.
Yeah, fair. And perhaps it was just a lapse. Who knows? I mean, again, beyond going back to seeing if we can find some evidence in the minutes. So we'll do that. We'll go back to that time frame and see if there's something we can discern. Yeah, as for other kind of sorry, before we jump ahead to kind of next steps around this, any other thoughts or questions around this? Denise, is your hand up from before, or
it should be down? Sorry.
Okay. And okay, I think I saw Alex up next. Go ahead.
Yes, like I'm trying to recall things, and I found a couple of documents from 2019 in which the OAPSI director is actually considered a parent representative and had voting rights. That's what I have in my notes over here. They have the separation between the parent representatives, the community rep, and the dinner representative, but the OAPSI director is part of the parent representation.
So in order for a committee member to be considered a parent, they have to be a parent of, excuse me, of a current student within the board. So I wonder if it was the appointment of the OAPSI rep different back then, because today it's again it's appointed by OAPSI themselves, it's not like we take from one of our OAPSI representatives from a school council, for example, who are generally all parent reps as well. So
well,
yes.
My recall for the many years that I was in CPIC is that the OAPSI, at the moment that Denise was elected OAPSI director, she was a parent representative, and then at that point she became the OAPSI director. That's until correct. The term that the person is there. Like, I know there were a couple of OAPSI directors before her, and they were definitely like, they left the position and left the moment that they left CPIC. You know what I mean? It was the moment that they didn't want to could not be more OAPSI directors that the voting was done. It's not something that is done every year or every 2 years. It was just, it's a position that is filled until the person, I think, can do it or is committed to do it. And then at that point, then it would go into voting a parent rep to be part of it.
Okay. All right. We'll see if we can find out anything further from the records back then. Violetta.
I just have a question. I'm very new to all of this, and I wonder whether this discussion is purely because we are out of alignment with the regulations, or because there has been material impact to outcome of decisions based on who has been voting.
Well, I think, and Maria, feel free to pipe in here too. I think the reason it's coming up is that there's at least a perceived misalignment with the regs, and so I think that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of first. Is there a misalignment, and should our bylaws then reflect more clearly what the voting rights are, and if so, what should those be? And again, so I think it's kind of a multi-part question, but I think the second part of your question, Violetta, is this stemming from outcomes from prior votes? I think was kind of your question, and no, the answer would be no. It's not like there was a 50-50 vote and it was swayed by the community rep or not. No, nothing like that.
Jerry, if I can just jump in there. So I agree with everything except the use of the word perceived. But I will say it's the reg, but again, excuse me, it's also our board procedure, which I would say aligns with the reg and the way the bylaws were previously written. And again, there was to me, it was a formatting issue, because it actually, the way I went back and looked at it today, the way that it was in the bylaws before, it said 3 community reps, and the 2 that were indented under that were the OAPSI and the deanery, and the 1 additional community rep was out, right? So it's all the 2 that are in question were clearly listed as being community reps in the previous version of the bylaws.
Yeah.
So to me, all of this plus what we're seeing at other boards, I think it all.
Yeah. And I'll speak to that in terms of the change of the formatting, and that was really driven by a desire again, and because the whole exercise of the rewrite of the document was a cleanup exercise to to eliminate duplication, contradiction, and generally just some poor formatting, and to try and bring some clarity to some of the bylaws without changing them. And one of those was distinguishing between, I mean, the use of community, like I won't argue that both our OAPC rep and our deanery rep are community representatives. It's just the context in which the word community is being used. Community rep in the context of how it's written in the regs versus community as in, you know, just community at large. I mean, everyone's frankly you know, a representative from our community, whether that be, you know, teachers, staff, you know, parents, trustees, everybody. So I think it's just the application of that word community, and the separation of community representative appointed by CPIC versus our other two community representatives, OAPC and deanery. And again, given past practice, seemingly, of them not having voting rights, that was that desire to try and make that distinction and clarity. For no other reason. It was, you know, certainly not an attempt to change the bylaw materially. So that's what that was about. Okay, so I am conscious of time and trying to be respectful.
Just very quick thing.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead, Alex. One last thought.
I'm looking at my notes on November 9th, 2020 at 7 p.m. And it was brought in the meeting a discrepancy on how the OAPC directories filled the number of years differ. If it was election, nomination, and appointment to be a featured meeting. And it says, I have like an asterisk that says term is continuous and it is selected, appointed by OAPC. And it said that it was taken offline. So I don't know, but that means that might give you a clue of which was the meeting in which that was discussed, November 9th, 2020.
Okay. So at least we have kind of the time frame within which that seemed to have occurred. So that's not that long ago. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I think the takeaway here is we'll do a little more digging. This is not something we want to you know, push out and delay. No, we want to get some clarity, and whatever the decision of the committee is. That's it. So we'll get to it, and we'll endeavor to get to it by our next meeting. And whether that be a case of just simply a clarification and we move forward, or if it needs to go to a vote and clarify or change or otherwise amend the bylaws themselves, then so be it. But let's see where our homework takes us, if that's okay. Does that sound reasonable to you, Maria, having been the one that tabled this today?
Yeah, I just had a couple of other suggestions. You know, again, trying to save money from a legal opinion. You know, there's the ombudsman. They're kind of slow, but I don't know whether the OXTA, whether they would, you know, be helpful, or something else came to mind. Now I'm drawing a blank. Oh, well, I mean, you could speak with the executive director for OAPC, right, in terms of how it's done at other boards. And I may have had another thought. If I have another thought, I can always follow up by email. But I guess my other comment would be, I think where the disagreement is, you know, is this something that we have, like, you know, voting rights are conferred by the regulation and therefore it's not up for debate? Or is it something that, you know, we get to decide? And I guess if we get to decide it, I would wonder why, if we're saying, okay, so these are two sort of distinctly Catholic, well, I mean, our whole committee's Catholic, but these are specifically Catholic positions. And it would be concerning to me if we didn't, you know, to me, it's kind of questionable to not confer voting rights on them, because that's, you know, how they're coming in. And again, there's been a lot of controversy about how many non-Catholic members we have on school council and non-Catholic student trustees, and people feeling they're not having a voice because they're not Catholic. And it really would be quite ironic to not give somebody a vote because they are Catholic. So just kind of.
Well, let's be clear, that's not the reason, right? That's
Okay,
certainly
well,
not about
that's
that.
one of the things that was brought up, was that these are outside of the these positions are outside of the regulation because the regulation doesn't contemplate these specifically Catholic positions, right? So that's, I'm responding to that kind of logic. So anyway, just some suggestions on maybe some sources that can help suss it out without the expense of a lawyer. I don't know how much a lawyer would cost. I don't think it's complicated legislation. They probably could give an answer pretty quickly, but those might be some other helpful suggestions that would be aware of, how it's being done provincially. I don't think, and also we're hearing that in the past, these people did have voting rights. So that was our past practice. If everybody's doing it differently, there's not much to suggest that this alternative position is the right one, I think. So.
Okay. All right, fair enough. Alex, did you have another comment or just hand up from before?
Oh, from before, sorry.
Okay, no worries. Okay. Okay, we'll cap it there. Thank you, and as always, folks, any committee member, if you have additional thoughts around this topic, and you want to share it, by correspondence, email after the fact, please do, absolutely, and we'll seek to nail this down by our next meeting. Okay. On that topic, just moving on our agenda, bear with us. I know it's 9:31. We'll wrap up here in the next couple minutes. So, any other business or actually more so future agenda items at this point that anyone wanted to raise? No. Okay. All right, very good. We'll move then to our closing prayer and adjournment. Father Dave, if you would do the honors, please.
In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Very good. Thank you, Father Dave. Appreciate that. And good night, everyone. Thank you for your keen attention, participation. Terrific discussion and questions tonight. I appreciate that we went over time tonight. And thank you again for your commitment. And we'll be in touch soon, and we'll see you again at the Council of Chairs. Good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.